What is being described here carries a strong emotional tone, but it helps to ground it in something more real and steady rather than treating it as something happening in a unseen or predetermined way. In real life, what often feels like sudden emotional urgency is usually the result of ongoing inner reflection reaching a tipping point. People don't typically shift from silence to action in a single instant out of nowhere. It's almost always the outcome of accumulated thoughts, unresolved feelings, and delayed decisions, finally reaching a level where they can no longer stay contained. When someone has been emotionally conflicted for a long time, they may go through repeated cycles of hesitation and reflection. They think about reaching out, then pull back. They imagine conversations, then delete them. They revisit memories, question their own choices, and try to convince themselves to stay distant. This kind of internal back and forth can last a long time, especially when fear of vulnerability or fear of consequences is involved. Eventually, there can come a moment where the emotional pressure of staying silent feels heavier than the fear of speaking. That shift is often what leads someone to finally take action. It is not necessarily dramatic or sudden from their perspective. It is more like reaching a point where avoidance no longer feels sustainable. At that stage, communication becomes less about perfect timing and more about emotional necessity. When a message or conversation finally happens after a long period of silence, it usually carries emotional weight, simply because so much time has passed without clarity. It may feel intense, not because it is, quote, destined or pre-planned in a dramatic sense, but because both people have had time to build thoughts, expectations, and emotional narratives around the absence of communication. The longer the silence, the more meaning the mind tends to attach to it. It's also common in situations like this for people to experience heightened sensitivity beforehand. You might notice yourself thinking more about the person, feeling restless, or becoming more aware of emotional signals in general. This doesn't necessarily indicate something external happening in real time. It often reflects internal anticipation and unresolved emotional focus. The mind naturally becomes alert when something feels unfinished. On the other side, the person who is reconsidering communication is usually not operating from a single emotional state, like certainty or fear alone. It's often a mix of reflection, regret, curiosity, and hesitation, all happening at once. They may be thinking about what they wish they had said earlier, what they should say now, and what the outcome might be. This complexity is what often delays action until a clearer emotional decision finally forms. When communication does happen after this kind of buildup, it can feel significant because it represents a break in silence, but the meaning of that moment is not fixed in advance. It depends on what is actually said, how it is said, and how both people respond to it in real time. The emotional impact comes from interaction, not prediction. It is also important to understand that reaching out after a long pause does not automatically define intent in a single direction. Sometimes people reach out for clarity, sometimes for closure, sometimes to reconnect, and sometimes simply to express what they were unable to say before. The purpose becomes clear only through honest conversation, not anticipation. From your side, the most stable place to be in a moment like this is not in expectation, but in awareness. That means noticing your own emotional responses without letting them run ahead of reality. If communication arrives, it should be received with calm attention rather than assumption about what it must mean. If it doesn't arrive, that absence also carries information about timing, readiness, and priority. What actually matters most in situations like this is not the intensity of the feeling, but the quality of clarity that follows it. Real understanding is built when words, actions, and consistency align over time. One message can open a door, but it cannot define the entire direction of a connection on its own. So rather than viewing this moment as something predetermined or guaranteed to unfold in a specific way, it is more accurate and healthier to see it as a point of potential communication, one that may or may not happen, and if it does, will need to be understood based on what is actually expressed, not what is expected beforehand. Whatever comes next, the strongest position you can hold is grounded awareness, not rushing interpretation, not assuming meaning before it is clear, and not letting anticipation replace reality. Clarity always becomes more reliable when it is allowed to unfold through real interaction rather than imagined outcomes. It will not be meaningless. It will carry the weight of everything that was left unsaid. And this, my beloved child, is only the beginning. My beloved child, the moment after action is always heavier than the decision itself, and this is where your soulmate stands right now. They have crossed an inner line that cannot be uncrossed. The message forming in their mind is no longer a draft. It is no longer a possibility. It is becoming real. They are rehearsing the words in silence, feeling the weight of every sentence before it is ever sent. This is why the energy feels dense around you. This is why your thoughts keep drifting back to them without effort. Something has already been set in motion. They are not acting from impulse or loneliness. They are acting from clarity, born out of loss, fear, and a sudden understanding that time does not wait for perfect moments. They know this message may shake you. They know it may reopen emotions you worked hard to stabilize. Yet they also know that not sending it would be a greater betrayal, not just to you, but to themselves. What is happening now is not noise. It is intention compressing into truth. And once truth takes form, it demands to be heard. Pay attention to what unfolds beneath the surface. Your soulmate has been watching patterns repeat in their life, and every path without you has felt incomplete. They tried to convince themselves that distance meant closure. They told themselves that silence was maturity. But the more they grew, the clearer it became that growth without honesty is just another form of avoidance. Something recently forced them to confront this. A conversation, a memory, a quiet moment where your absence became impossible to ignore. In that instant, they realized that the connection between you was never unfinished because it lacked effort. It was unfinished because it was interrupted, and now they are correcting that interruption. The message coming to you carries acknowledgement. It carries responsibility. It carries an admission that they should have spoken sooner. They are no longer interested in pretending they are unaffected. They are no longer interested in appearing strong at the cost of being real. This is why the tone of what you receive will feel different. It will not circle around the truth. It will move straight through it. There is something important you must understand here. This action is not about pulling you back into confusion. It is about offering you clarity they once denied. They know you sensed their hesitation before. They know you felt the gaps in their words, the pauses that hid meaning. This time, they are choosing transparency over comfort. They are choosing to stand exposed rather than protected. That is not an easy choice for them. It required dismantling old defenses and admitting where they were wrong. The surprising part of this message is not just what they will say, but how directly they will say it. No games, no ambiguity, no half-statements designed to test your reaction. They want you to know exactly where they stand, exactly what they feel, and exactly what they are willing to do moving forward. This is why your intuition has been restless. Your soul recognizes when someone is finally matching the depth it has always carried. Now feel the gravity of what this means for you. When this message arrives, it will create a pause inside you. Not panic, not chaos, a pause. That pause is power. It is the moment where you realize that something you thought was over never truly ended. You may remember conversations you never finished, questions you never asked, emotions you buried for the sake of peace. This message does not demand an immediate answer. It demands presence. It asks you to read slowly, to feel what rises without judgment, because this is not about rushing into the past. It is about deciding what deserves space in your future. Your soulmate is stepping forward, but they are not dragging you. They are offering. They are opening a door and waiting to see if you choose to look through it. That respect matters. That restraint matters. It shows growth. It shows intention. It shows that this action is not about control, but about connection. Let this final truth anchor you. Whatever you feel when the message comes is valid. Surprise, relief, emotion, stillness, all of it belongs. You are not obligated to become who you were. You are allowed to respond as who you are now. The reason this moment is powerful is because both of you are standing in different places than before. Wiser, more aware, less willing to settle for unspoken feelings. This message is a signal that the cycle of avoidance has ended. Whether this leads to reunion, resolution, or a deeper understanding, it will not lead to confusion. That is the gift of this action. Your soulmate is choosing clarity over fear, and that choice alone shifts everything. Stay grounded, stay present, because what unfolds after this message will not be accidental. It will be shaped by truth, and truth has a way of changing everything once it is finally allowed to speak. My beloved child, after the message is sent, there is a silence that feels louder than any words, and this is the space where meaning settles. Your soulmate will wait, not with impatience, but with awareness. They understand that what they have offered cannot be rushed. They know they have stepped into vulnerable territory, and they accept whatever pace you choose. This waiting is not empty. It is filled with reflection, with memories resurfacing, with a quiet hope that whatever comes next will be real, not imagined. While you read their words, they will be replaying every moment that led them here, questioning nothing except whether they should have done this sooner. That tells you something important. This action was not a gamble, it was a correction, and corrections are made when someone finally sees clearly. The energy between you at this stage is calm, but charged, like the stillness before something honest begins. Notice what shifts inside you as you process this. You will realize that the message did not arrive to disturb your peace, but to align it. There is a difference. Disturbance creates chaos. Alignment creates clarity. As you read, certain emotions will rise not because they are new, but because they were never resolved. You may feel seen in ways you were not before. You may recognize that they finally understand the impact their silence had on you. This understanding is what changes the dynamic. It is not about words sounding beautiful. It is about accountability being present. They are no longer explaining themselves away. They are owning their part without excuses. That is why the message feels grounded. That is why it does not try to persuade you. It simply states the truth as it is now. And truth spoken without pressure has a way of restoring balance where imbalance once lived. There is a deeper layer you are meant to perceive. Your soulmate is not only reaching out to you, they are confronting a version of themselves they avoided for a long time. In choosing to speak, They are choosing growth over comfort. This is why their energy feels different, more centered, more sincere. They are no longer asking you to fill a void. They are inviting you to share a space they have finally stabilized within themselves. That matters more than any promise. It shows that this action comes from strength, not dependency. They have realized that connection is not about possession, it is about presence, and the presence they are offering now is steady, not scattered. When you sense this, you will understand why this moment feels significant, beyond emotion. It feels like a turning point, because it is one. Allow yourself to understand what is being offered. This is not an attempt to rewrite the past. It is an invitation to redefine what is possible. The message does not ask you to forget what hurt. It acknowledges it without reopening it. That balance is rare. It shows maturity. It shows that they are not looking to repeat old cycles, but to close them properly. If you choose to respond, it will not be from longing, it will be from clarity. And if you choose to take time, that time will be respected. There is no chase here, there is no pressure, there is only honesty waiting to be met with honesty. That is why this moment carries weight. It is not dramatic, it is decisive. And decisive moments are the ones that change trajectories quietly, without chaos, but with permanence. Let this final understanding settle into you. You are not standing at the edge of uncertainty. You are standing at the edge of truth. Whatever you choose after this will be informed, not imagined. The message your soulmate sent was the first step in dissolving what was left unresolved. It does not demand an outcome, it creates space for one. And space, when held with respect, becomes fertile ground for something real. Whether this path leads to reconnection, closure, or a deeper mutual understanding, it will be honest. That honesty is the real gift here. It restores your power, it restores your voice, and it reminds you that when two souls choose clarity over fear, even after silence, something meaningful always emerges from that choice. My beloved child, what happens next is subtle, but it is powerful. After truth is spoken, the energy between two people does not rush forward. It settles. Your soulmate feels this settling now. They are no longer anxious in the way they once were. There is a calm acceptance in them, because they finally said what needed to be said. This calm is important. It shows that their action was not driven by desperation. It was driven by resolve. They are ready to face whatever direction this leads, not because they expect a specific outcome, but because they trust the honesty of the moment. As you sit with their words, something inside you will begin to reorganize. Old assumptions loosen. Old narratives lose their grip. You start seeing the connection for what it truly was, and what it can realistically become. This clarity does not shout. It whispers, but it changes everything. Observe how your perception shifts. You may notice that the weight you once carried around this connection begins to feel lighter, not because the past disappears, but because it is no longer undefined. Undefined emotions create heaviness. Defined truth creates release. The message you received has drawn clear lines where there were once blurred edges. Your soulmate's willingness to be transparent has given you permission to be honest with yourself as well. You are no longer guessing where you stand. You are no longer filling silence with imagination. This alone restores a sense of inner stability. That stability is what allows you to respond, if you choose to, without fear. You are not reacting to uncertainty. You are engaging with reality. And reality, even when emotional, is easier to navigate than endless questions. There is an unspoken respect forming here. Your soulmate recognizes your strength more now than ever before. They see how you carried yourself through absence, how you did not collapse into bitterness, how you continue to grow even without answers. This recognition changes the way they approach you. They are not trying to overpower your emotions. They are not trying to reclaim a role they once abandoned. They are meeting you as an equal. That equality is felt in the tone of their presence, even in silence. You may sense that they are listening more than speaking, that they are giving you space without pulling away. This balance is not accidental. It is the result of inner work they were forced to do when they could no longer ignore the truth. And because of this, the dynamic between you now holds potential it did not have before. Understand what this moment truly represents. This is not the peak of the story. It is the foundation. Foundations are quiet, but they determine everything built on top of them. Whether you move forward together or separately, this exchange has corrected something essential. It has restored honesty where avoidance once lived. It has replaced guessing with knowing. That alone is transformative. You are no longer bound to the past version of this connection. You are free to choose from a place of awareness. That freedom is powerful. It means whatever decision you make will not be driven by longing or fear, but by alignment with who you are now. Your soulmate's action has given you that gift, even if the path ahead is still unfolding. Let this final truth ground you fully. Nothing about this moment is rushed. Nothing is forced. It is unfolding at a pace that allows understanding to take root. You do not need to label what this becomes. You only need to stay present with what it is. Truth has a way of revealing the next step when the time is right. Until then, trust the clarity you feel. Trust the calm that follows honesty. Trust your ability to navigate this with wisdom, because the action your soulmate took was not meant to pull you back into the past. It was meant to meet you in the present, and meeting in the present is the only place where something real can begin. My beloved child, as time moves forward from this moment, something steady replaces the uncertainty that once surrounded this connection. You may notice that your thoughts about your soulmate no longer feel heavy or confusing. They feel grounded. That is because truth has a stabilizing effect. Your soulmate too feels this shift. They are no longer questioning whether they did the right thing. They know they did. The courage it took to reach out has anchored them in a deeper sense of self-respect. This is important. When someone acts from self-respect rather than fear, their presence becomes consistent. What is being described here reflects a shift in emotional perception more than a confirmed external change in circumstances. When someone has been emotionally uncertain for a long time, even a small sign of clarity or communication can feel like a complete transformation of the entire dynamic. The mind naturally tries to stabilize that change by giving it structure, meaning, and direction. In real human relationships, what often gets interpreted as a, quote, new phase is usually the result of something simpler: increased awareness, more intentional communication, or a temporary moment of emotional openness. These moments can absolutely be meaningful, but they are not fixed states. They still depend on consistency over time to hold their shape. When communication becomes more thoughtful or less reactive, it can feel like emotional safety is being rebuilt. That feeling is real in the moment, because human beings respond strongly to tone, presence, and behavior. When someone appears more attentive or considerate, it naturally reduces anxiety and creates space for calmer interaction. But emotional safety is not created by a single shift. It develops through repeated patterns that remain stable over time. It is also common during emotionally significant situations for interpretation to move faster than reality. The mind begins to fill in gaps. what this behavior remember psychological response to uncertainty, especially when emotional investment is high. However, meaning becomes reliable only when it is confirmed through consistent actions, not inferred from isolated moments. When someone begins to communicate more calmly or respectfully after a period of distance or uncertainty, it often signals increased awareness rather than a complete emotional resolution. Awareness can lead to better behavior, but it does not automatically resolve all underlying complexity. People can act more thoughtfully while still figuring out what they truly want or are ready for. On your side, the most important development is not the behavior of the other person, but your ability to remain emotionally grounded within it. When you stop relying on uncertainty or silence to define your emotional state, you regain internal stability. That means you can engage with what is happening without losing your sense of direction. This is where emotional maturity becomes visible, not in interpreting every shift as a decisive answer, but in being able to hold ambiguity without being controlled by it. You can acknowledge positive changes without turning them into guarantees. You can notice effort without inflating it into certainty, and you can stay open without abandoning your own boundaries. Healthy connection, if it develops, does not require constant decoding. It becomes easier to understand over time because it is consistent, not confusing. Consistency is what turns temporary emotional moments into stable trust. Without it, even sincere intentions remain unconfirmed. It is also important to recognize that clarity does not remove all emotion. It simply removes distortion. You can still care, still feel, still hope, but those feelings are no longer driving your decisions blindly. Instead, they are being held alongside observation and self-respect. When that balance is present, your choices become more grounded. You are not reacting out of fear of loss or desire for reassurance. You are responding based on what is actually present in front of you. That is where emotional strength becomes practical rather than theoretical. If communication continues, its value will not come from intensity or emotional language, but from consistency over time. If it does not continue, that absence also provides clarity. Either way, what matters most is that your emotional center remains intact and not dependent on unpredictable shifts in someone else's readiness. What often gets misunderstood in situations like this is the idea that emotional movement in one person automatically defines the future of the connection. In reality, both people remain independent agents. One person's realization, hesitation, or change in approach does not finalize the outcome. It only adds information to the situation. From that perspective, the most stable place to stand is one of awareness rather than expectation. Awareness allows you to see what is actually happening without collapsing it into a fixed story too early. It keeps you flexible, observant, and aligned with reality instead of projection. Ultimately, what determines the direction of any connection is not a single message or emotional moment, but the sustained pattern that follows it. Time reveals what intensity cannot, behavior confirms what words initiate, and consistency defines what intention actually means. From here, the most constructive approach is simple. Stay attentive, stay grounded, and let actions, not interpretation, shape your understanding.